I'm sitting down with a guy that I have a ton of respect for. He is a legendary angler in the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame. He's an icon in the tournament walleye scene. And I'm lucky to call him my friend, Gary Parsons. Here he is in the flesh. Super excited to be talking with you, Gary. This is episode 19. What do you say we get into it?
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, Greg. I watched some of your other episodes, and this looks like it'll be fun.
This isn't another fishing podcast. This is another fishing podcast.
All right. Well, I guess the first thing, Gary, is, we'll get into kind of how we know each other, but, a little bit down the road here. But I first want to kind of get into, how you started fishing, how you got into fishing. What was that first experience you had that kind of lit that passion, that fire in fishing that you have?
I don't know if I can put my finger right on the exact moment in time. I know that when I was very young, like 4 years old type young, my father would take me occasionally out on Lake Winnebago, and while he was trolling, and I would sit in the boat, and I'm sure he's just looking at getting extra rods out, right? But but at that time it was different. I was spending time with my dad, so I mean that obviously gets your attention even at the age of 4. But when I was pretty young, my parents got a small cottage up in the Clintonville, Wisconsin area. It was the Cloverleaf chain of lakes. And we'd go up there every weekend. And I hated it at first because all we did was mow lawn and clean up stuff. And every weekend seemed like it was a work weekend, right? But the one thing that this place did have was an ice dock. And there were just countless bluegills on this dock. So that's where I really started fishing. And I would spend hours and hours out on that dock. And then one of the other cool things is at night, you could get big bullheads off the dock. And so my parents actually gave me permission to stay up as late as I wanted to, I was really young, as long as I was fishing bullheads and didn't leave the yard. So, and I had to check in constantly. We couldn't stay outside. We couldn't sit on the dock. We'd have to go and go into the house and then come back every 10 minutes or so and check the lines. I don't even know if that was legal at that time. But, since both my parents have passed, I don't think anyone's going to arrest them for treating the kids the wrong way. But I did get fired up about fishing, right? And I think that just carried through my teenage years and, into my adult life. I love the outdoors. I've spent every minute that I could in the outdoors, either fishing or hunting. And so that's kind of the legacy, I guess.
What's funny about it is that bullheads really seem to provide they're a common species that seems to be a thread, if you will, to get really people kind of hooked into fishing. Like I got started catching yellow bullheads, brown bullheads, black bullheads, like these, down in southern Minnesota. And I got to tell you, as a kid, I didn't care about bass. I didn't care about walleye. I was like, it was green sunfish. When I first started fishing, it was green sunfish. It was bullheads. It was like the species that, not so glamorous, but they were really important, as a little kid, to just feel that bite, that whatever that adrenaline rush, that dopamine rush that you get. It's just that bite. It really doesn't matter what the species is, at least in the beginning. It can be just these little, very common, fish that can really, ignite a fire. And it sounds like that's what happened with you. And I know that's what happened with me. Very simple beginnings, but look at where you are now, and that's really cool to see that.
Yeah, I see the same thing happening with my grandchildren who chases kids. They've got a pond with a lot of bluegills, and those kids are spending, 2, 3, 4 hours a day, every day when they're not in school, fishing. It doesn't matter if they're catching a bluegill or a smallmouth bass or whatever, because they're pretty good anglers already. Just so something's jerking on their string, right? And I think that's very key in the young children. If you can get them engaged where they're actually having fun. And I think that the neat thing about bluegills and some of these fish is that the kids can transition into a semblance of feeling responsible. Like, I actually did this all by myself. And then they can repeat it and repeat it. That, big school of bluegills is just a blessing for a young angler.
No doubt. Yeah, no doubt. Like when you get into I remember catching very small bass as a kid, like finding a school of little bass, and thinking that was like I had discovered sunken treasure or something. It was very, very simple, but for me as a young angler, it was the greatest experience ever, So yeah, it's super cool to hear how you started. What was the catalyst, I guess, for you getting into tournament fishing and taking fishing so much more serious? That jump, like what was that?
Well, I've always said it was, my first tournament when someone challenged me, but it actually went way, way earlier than that when I think about it. We moved to the town of Chilton, Wisconsin, when I was in third grade. And it had a river, and it was just the rotten old river, the Manitowoc River. It didn't really have much in it other than a few northerns and bullheads and stuff like that. But, since I like fishing, I went fishing. And then all of a sudden I hear this about this kid who always catches the most northerns and the biggest northerns. And he's like a legend in the community, right? And he's a young kid. He's a little bit older than I am, but he fishes every day. And I'd see him on the river all the time. I didn't talk to him very much because he's older. So I actually took it upon myself to beat this kid. I found out, how many northerns he got. And then I'd talk to him and we'd have a running total. And I went like 2 years and I couldn't even touch what this kid was catching. So, maybe this is why I fish tournaments the way I do, is figuring stuff out. So the way that I ended up beating him, and I beat him bad, is I went down below the dam, and there is a street there, and underneath the street there are a bunch of rocks along the river, and I'd turn them over and there'd be little redworms in there. So I just go down with a small hook, and then I'd go and I'd catch creek chubs out of the river, because right below the dam, the water was rushing good. There's a lot of creek chubs. So I'd get a pail full of creek chubs, and then I'd go up above the dam in the larger, deeper area, and I would throw out a bobber with a creek chub, and those northerns could not resist it. And so it's totally homegrown, catching the bait all the way up to the northerns. And that's really how I beat him. So that was probably my first introduction to tournaments. It was just, hey, this kid is really good, and I made a goal, and then for the small amount, I ended up beating him. So that carried all the way through, until I was in my teens, and then ultimately when I started fishing walleye tournaments.
So some people know about you is that your profession, you were in dentistry first. And so it's interesting to know how, I think people would be interested to know how you got into that field. Were you fishing at the same time that you were also in school for that? Like, how did that all kind of develop? And because I know you're eating up with tournament fishing, and I know a little bit of the story but obviously I want you to tell it. But how, you were running, it's very stressful to run a dental office. My mom was a dental hygienist, and then she became a manager of a dental office. So I have some idea. But you've got this dental office to run, but then you're also just competing at the highest level in walleye tournaments. Just tell me how that developed, like how all that kind of happened.
Well, it started by accident. I actually went to college to become a fisheries biologist. And about 6 months into it, and talking with some of the fisheries people and the instructors, I quickly found out that they didn't make any money. And, most of them were fairly poor. And my goal was to be able to hunt and fish all over the place, right? That's what I really wanted. And I thought that would be a way to do it. Well, it didn't take long to find out the reality of the world is that I would never make enough money to go hunting, out west or anything like that. At least in my mind, I didn't think that I would. So I switched majors to biology, and then I went to a small school in Ashland, Wisconsin at first called Northland College. And I literally took all of their science classes in 2 years. I didn't take any of the English classes or anything like that. And I found myself kind of up against the wall because it was a liberal arts school. And for me to graduate, and I basically started dabbling in physics classes a little bit. But for me to graduate, I had to take a whole slew of liberal arts classes. And I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy today. And, I had very good vocabulary skills. I could write well already. At least I felt I could. And so I transferred to Montana State University, which was a much larger school, had way more science classes. And then I expanded my majors out to biology, chemistry, and physics. I literally was going for a triple major, figuring that I could get a job in a lab or something along those lines where the income would be real good. And that would allow me to fish and to hunt wherever I wanted, right? So I'm a junior in college. I was one of those lucky guys that, I don't know if you call it a photographic memory or whatever, but I had a 4.0 all the way through college. And so I was blessed with good grades. I didn't really even work at it that time, that hard. I was, you get up to Montana with all those blue ribbon trout streams, and I spent way more time, skipping classes and fishing. But towards the end of my junior year, my grandmother got really sick. My grandfather passed only months before. Then my grandmother got really sick, and she told my dad that while she was in the hospital that she wanted me to come home. And so he flew me home. And first time I think I was ever on a plane and the whole work. So I came home. I didn't know what was going on at all. And we walk in the hospital room. She said, "Don, you're out. Get out of here. I want to talk with Gary by himself." And she made him close the door too. And he didn't really know what was going on. Well, she basically coerced me and made me promise that I would go into a medical field.
Oh, no kidding.
She said, I'm the only one who ever went to a, school beyond high school. She was a school teacher for a little bit before she became a farmer's wife. She said, in the whole family, you're the first one who went to college. I've been following you closely. My grandparents, a lot of people don't know, they took me fishing way more probably than my dad ever did. And so I had a pretty good relationship with both of them. And grandma was always really, really kind of cool. So, this lady's telling me this. And I said, "Grandma, I'm not going to be a doctor." And she said, "No, you are." And I said, "No, I'm not. I don't want to be on call." So it's not that the profession is, something that I wouldn't like to do, but I don't want to be on call because you already know I'm going hunting and fishing. And I feel that if I'm on call, I won't be able to do those things. I'll get married to the business. And that's a reason why I went to Montana State, because I know what I want to do in my life. And so we started discussing it. And I said, well, could I be an optometrist? Could I be a dentist maybe, where I could, make my own schedule and not necessarily be married to someone who I had to be on call for? And so she agreed to that. So I went back and I went, oh, now what? And, she died two days after that. Mm. So, talk about a kick in the stomach. I promised her. And so it kind of changed my life. And I didn't know at the time how it would change it. I wasn't real happy with the deal, but she was my grandma. And, she was the lady, right? She
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
she was the one. And so I went back and I was rooming with 2 other roommates off campus. And I told them, I said, well, I got this promise. I might as well just get to it. There are some dental schools that would accept you after the junior year if you really did well on the tests and had a good GPA. So I basically applied to Marquette and to the University of Minnesota. And then I got interviews to both of those places. I took the test. I didn't even know. I walked into it. It was a 20 below zero day, Greg. And my truck wouldn't start. So I go to this, the test that you have to take to be considered to be entering these schools. I didn't even know you could take pre-tests and study for the test. I just went in cold. I had no idea, because I couldn't get my vehicle started. And I finally got it started. And I got there and I'm 15 minutes late. And the guy starts yelling at me and says, you can't take the test. You're late. And I told him why. He says, well, you're never going to be able to catch up. They're all taking it, but I'll let you try. And, I sat in some of the sections, the 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional sections. I didn't even know what they were trying to explain. And then so I had to sit there and figure it out, and I'm competing all against all these people who took pre-tests, knew everything about them. And I was like, I figured them out, but the Lord blessed me with 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional skills. The academics I could handle, anything about biology and chemistry and stuff. I was in good shape there. So I didn't really, have any issues with those parts. But the 2 and 3-dimensional stuff, which is really what a lot of the dental schools base their decisions on, I knocked it out of the park. And I didn't even know I did. Once I got the 2D stuff done, I thought, this is okay, I get this. And I could solve those problems easy. And then 3D took a little bit longer, but it was the same type of thing. And that's what they look at as, part of being a dentist is being able to reform teeth and build teeth. And, you build them with lost wax techniques and things like that. And being able to manipulate your fingers and build things. And you're building things inside a person's mouth. And so I get back the results, and they're just tremendously good. And that's where I got the interviews. I went in for the interviews, and both schools accepted me as a junior. And actually, the University of Minnesota said I could get into their medical program if I spent another year in undergrad. Well, I had grandma's promise. I was more like, let's get on with the program.
Right.
The sooner I get out of school, the sooner I can start making some money and go fishing and hunting.
Right.
And so that was the plan. And I chose Marquette, and Marquette chose me. And so it was a pretty good thing. It was a new era in my life. Scary. I hated cities. I had to move to Milwaukee. And, the city traffic and stuff was, I was a little town country boy. And Postman, Montana at that time was 20,000 people, and it was scary to me to drive around there. Then I jump over to Milwaukee, and it's like, oh my goodness, I hate this place. But I did like the dental school. The first time in my career, I felt that I was working towards something that I would actually use in life instead of all the crap I was learning in college. I'm not saying chemistry and biology stuff was crap. That was all important. But honestly, some of the other classes that they wanted you to take and stuff, to me, was a waste of time. And I feel that way to today. I think that half of college, quite frankly, and for young people who are watching me, I think it's a waste of time. The other half, if you can engage in something that you really, really desire, then you can learn something. Dental school was all different. Everything that they taught pertained to the world. And so I kind of got into that, right? It was like, okay, I'm shaping my future here. And so the only exception to the rule is I went bow hunting every weekend. I'd go home. It was an hour and a half drive. I'd go home, bow hunt every weekend, but then I'd be back by Monday morning. And so that went on for 4 years. I got lucky. I finished a little early. I had to wait for the boards. And, so during the time I got all my prerequisites done about 6 months early. So during that time is when inflation was really high, and the interest rates were like in the 22% range. And I have to honestly say, my father owned a construction business. They were slow. He didn't want to lay off his workers if he could avoid it. He wanted to. So he said, hey, we'll get this little crappy building down in downtown Chilton, and I'll redo it for you at cost, just to keep my workers working and give us something to do during this, crappy economic time. And so I literally ended up having a very nice office, and it was all set, ready to go. And I hadn't even graduated yet because I didn't take the boards. So my neck was stuck out 10 miles. The local banker gave me the loan. It was going to kick in, right after I started. So I needed to pass those boards. So it was a very, very high stress situation. And I got through it all, got through the boards, no problems, and started the business. And then I was really lucky. And a lot of things, I look back on my life, I'm so lucky in timing. And this is kind of a sad thing to say, but there was a dentist in Oshkosh that got leukemia, and he needed a bone marrow transplant. And he put out on the board, could someone help him run his practice? Well, I called him up. I said, hey, I'm freshly out of school. I could help run your practice for you. I'm trying to start my own, but I'll drive all the way around Lake Winnebago. And, it was a couple-hour drive from my house to get to his office. I said, I'll help you out. And, so I did that for about, 6 months or 8 months. I can't even remember, but it was quite a while. So I'd work at his practice all day long and run that practice. And then I'd come back and I'd open hours at my office from about 6 o'clock at night till 10 or 11. I was normally in there at 11 at night. Then I get up early in the morning and drive over there. I did that for a long time, but it gave me immediate income. And it allowed my practice. I didn't have to hope that it was going to go gangbusters right out of the chute, because I had bank payments to make, right? So it worked out beautifully. And then and his bone marrow transplant worked out beautifully. He came back, took his practice over, pretty much licked, his disease to the point where he lived for a long time. I kind of lost track of him after a while, but I don't even remember his name now. I'm so damn old, I can't remember.
Please.
But it's, that's the kind of the deal, how I got going in dentistry. And I immediately, as soon as I could afford it, I bought a boat.
So
started fishing.
So that allowed you to, that income, getting your situated into your career, getting planted firmly, kind of getting that business going, gave you the ability to, get the boat and move towards fishing and hunting more like what you originally wanted to do, have a career where it would afford that. Yes. It's interesting though, like, were you, that you went down this path primarily for your grandmother, and I didn't know that. Before. I mean, that says, something for you, the fact that you would, you saw it. So both my grandmothers were incredible people, and so the fact that you did that for her basically, and put your own kind of goals, secondary, is really interesting. And like I said, I didn't know that story until right now.
Yeah, life is full of things that surprise you. And I think everyone that has lived a pretty full life can look back at their life and go, wow, here was a pivotal moment. And here, I did this and I didn't really plan on doing it that way, but it worked out, or it didn't work out, or whatever. I think, life can be fluid, and it's how you respond to those challenges. And in my situation, I wasn't real happy with Grandma making me promise, but in the grand scope of things, I was blessed that she did. And I look back and it was the best path for me. My grandmother chose the best path for me, because it allowed me to get a boat. It allowed me to dictate time. I could get time off if I wanted to. And I was totally my own boss. And so I could schedule my schedule. I wasn't locked into a particular schedule. I always would have my patients covered. I'd get a doctor that would, cover for me if I decided to go 10 days to fish a tournament. So I started fishing tournaments. I literally created a second career at the same time I was doing dentistry. And, it resulted in 110-hour work weeks between the two occupations, because I wrote a lot of our Keith Cabayas's in my articles at first. I wrote tons of them. And at first, it wasn't Keith. It was my brother and I. And my brother didn't do any of the marketing stuff. I did all that. And, Keith and I, then when we joined together, I had a photographic background. That's one of the classes I did take in college. I took quite a few photography classes. So when we won our first MWC championship, we took that $10,000 winning. That was the championship amount then. We invested the whole works into camera gear. And we were serious. We were both white collar workers that wanted to fish full time for a living. And so we didn't screw around. Fishing was our business, and that's how we treated it. And the tournaments and all that stuff were gravy. That's what we really liked to do. But there has to be a means to an end. And both of us had good enough paying jobs where we could, for me, the dental income would help with some of the traveling and stuff. And I think that was important. For Keith, his IBM income helped. And that allowed us to build our brand in the fishing industry to the point where there was a day where we felt we could go full time. At that time, I had 5 hygienists working for me, 10 staff members. My practice was monstrous. I practiced in a town of 3,000 people, but I had 4,000 active patients. I grew that business that fast. And it was pretty cool business, but it was eating me up. I mean, the hours I put in with both those things, occupations, I'm glad I don't have to go through that again, because
that's an incredible amount of time, just to know, like, to compete at the level that you need to compete at, and then you're also running a dental office, a successful dental office. It had to be, an incredible amount of work, but it's like, you knew what you had to do. And I was going to say, I used to religiously read in Fisherman Magazine. And I remember when reading Walleye articles and, on you guys would be in the article or wrote the article, or I just remember seeing your photography or the photos that you guys were in. And they were always the deal. Like you and I, later on when we began working together at Bass Pro Shops, you and Keith Cabayas, you understood the importance of production. And it's only, it's good for me. I'm getting what I need to get done to make I'm getting the shots I need to make a captivating television program. You knew it. You knew, and I've worked with a lot of guys that don't get it. And so, and you guys knew this for a very long time. You knew that when you were early on, building your fishing career, you knew that, okay, yeah, tournament stats are very important, but also writing articles, getting great pictures with beautiful fish, and composition and lighting, how important and how powerful that is to promote a brand. And to me, I've said this to both you and Cabayas, is that you guys have always impressed me as fishermen, but maybe more so, and I don't know, it's probably a dead heat, but you also impressed me very much with your business, acumen. And that is especially impressive too, because it's hard enough to make it as a professional, like, bass fisherman, And there's a lot, I would say there's a lot more tournaments for professional bass fishing to make a career of it. In walleye fishing, it's smaller. So to make the career that you guys have made, it really says something, I think, about your work ethic and just how great a fisherman you are, but just that you understand, business so well, and how to market yourself, and the importance of marketing and just, so anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here, but it is something that I've always been very impressed with you guys.
Well, Greg, it's kind of funny that you say that, because the one thing that I go back to the dental school part, the one thing that they didn't teach is how to run your business. So I found myself, struggling with the scheduling, struggling with how to fill out the payment forms and how do you bill people and all of that kind of stuff. And, fortunately, some of the people who sold you your equipment would help you out with those things. But the school itself didn't do anything to help you with the business. And so I found myself having good success in the first couple of years. And I thought, I'm going to learn more. That's what it's all about. You learn from people who are experts. And so I actually, over the course of the next probably 4 or 5 years, spent $50,000 in marketing classes. Basically and they boil down to one-on-one marketing, where it's how you treat people. And for me, it was natural, because I like to treat people nice. I like to inform them. And that's basically what I learned in these classes, along with some of the mechanical things for billing and all that kind of stuff, obviously. But that series of marketing classes transferred perfectly over into the fishing world, because the fishing world, like you said, walleye fishing is small, but fishing itself, to me, is small. The people who run the fishing business, all the companies that make products, and the boat companies, motor companies, that's pretty small. You could get, with time, you get to know almost a huge number of the people who sign checks and build motors and on and on and on. You don't know everyone, but you know a lot of people in upper management, and it's not that big of an industry. And so you end up treating those people the same way. And that's what I did learn from a business and marketing standpoint, is be helpful. Try to, we go back into how did we market to get a brand? Well, we took Doug Stange out fishing and showed him a jigging method that was totally against what he thought would work. He always thought that you waited for a walleye to bite and waited for them to turn the right angle and set the hook. And we basically won a world championship doing immediate hook sets with short, stiff rods, way different than the whole industry had ever even heard about. And, we got into some philosophical discussions over the phone with Doug. He came down and fished with us and went, whoa, these guys are the real deal. And so we literally developed a fantastic relationship with Doug, and then ultimately with Al and Ron. And I have to honestly thank them, because they allowed us to do a lot of writing and, use our photography in articles. And, I could write pretty good. So in many cases we wrote them, but then we also, hired ghostwriters. I mean, we didn't screw around, right, Greg? I mean,
yeah.
You worked with us for quite a while. And I can remember hiring a young writer at that time by the name of Dave Mull. Dave has been major editor for many magazines since then. But Dave's career literally got started with us because I liked him. He seemed to be able to write some things that I had seen that were real good. And so we did our first major article within Fish, and Dave was the one who wrote it. And so he was young, but he was a professional writer. And we used our photos to basically support the articles. And we learned a valuable lesson. We learned that the writers have a tough road. It was hard for them to make a living. And so if they had to travel a tremendous amount just to get one particular photo, it cost them so much money, they didn't make any money. And so we developed a photo library that was incredibly huge. And that's the difference between that period in time compared to now is 8 to 10 pound walleyes were hard to come by. Photos of them were hard to come by. And, a lot of the fisheries weren't developed enough to where people would know where to even get those types of fish. Well, we did, and we would travel to go get those photos. And so we had such a huge library of good photos that the writers just gravitated towards us because they knew that they could do a good interview, a good article, and we would support them with photos. And that's how we built our business. Now, in today's world, go look at Instagram and Facebook. There'll be 108 plus pound plus walleyes every single day. So it's the way you market now is a little bit different, right? And I think that's the one thing that we always looked at is we love to fish. We love tournaments. We love catching big fish. We loved, figuring stuff out that nobody else had. We had a whole lifetime and career of doing that. Then we got involved with Bass Pro and did TV and all of that kind of stuff. But the bottom line on it is we always treated our careers in fishing as a blessing, and that the business part was just as important as the fishing part. And I don't think, and part of that goes back, Greg, to what you said. There weren't as many walleye tournaments. And, when you did win one in those days, it was $10,000, $30,000, $40,000. Now you can win an NWT event and win $80,000, but there's only 4 of them. And so during the rest of the year, if you want to do this seriously, you either fish tournament circuits where you can't make can't make any money at it, or you work hard with branding yourself and building a good, connection with the people who want to learn how to fish. And that's what we did. And that's what we're going to continue to do in the future. Only, Chase and I are going to expand that in a big way.
So you went from, your practice, your dental practice, getting that up and running. What were you doing? Like, how did you make that leap into fishing tournaments more? And then what was that final decision where you were like, okay, I can do this full time. I'm going to leave the dental practice. Like, go through that kind of, what was happening in your life then? How did you make that final leap? Okay, I'm doing this full time. I'm going to give this a run. Like, that had to be an incredible part of your life to make that huge of a decision.
It was scary for me. And the way it kind of happened is both Keith and I were getting some pretty good sponsorships. And at that time, you marketed yourself as a team. It was all the walleye tournaments were all team events. And so that's how we marketed ourselves. And he was working on a pretty high up position with IBM programming at that time. And he had a team of people that worked for him, so he could take time off to do the photos and do tournaments too. For me, I started getting some of the dentists that would cover when I was gone. A couple of them were younger people who were kind of wandering around, didn't have their own business, wanted their own business, and very good dentists. And so I hired some of them part-time. And that's how I phased into it. I had a big enough practice, thank goodness, that I could have a second dentist working with me. And so that's what I kind of did. There were times where there were 2 dentists there. Then I would have an oral surgeon. I was in a very rural area. People didn't like to travel for, to get a wisdom tooth out. So I went around to the community, to the bigger towns, Manitowoc and Fond du Lac, and I made deals with the oral surgeons, especially the young ones that were just coming up out of, building their own practice. I had one oral surgeon who was an excellent surgeon come once a week to my practice, and he would do oral surgery in one of the suites. So I looked at the dental practice from a business standpoint, but I knew that I couldn't handle the volume and the level of care, most importantly, because I insisted anyone that worked with me or for me to treat the patients like they were your kids, and that you would spend the time and explain things with them. And that went all the way to the oral surgeon. And they worked in that building. That's the acumen that they had to have. And they all engaged in it. Well, dentists that worked for me got interested in being part owner. And Keith came to me and said, "Hey, I'm going to quit IBM. I got a deal where I could come back within 2 years, and they put me in the same position. I've talked to them already. I want to go full time." And I said, "Well, man, you're kind of forcing my hand, Keith." He said, "Well, it is what it is." He said, "That's my goal. That's what I want to do." And I said, "Well, I'll try to go more into the fishing part." Well, I phased out of the dental practice over a number of years. And by doing that, there was a dentist that wanted to buy the practice completely. He was covering for me when I was gone on the fishing things quite a bit. He was a very nice guy. And so I financed it for him. He made payments to me for a number of years. I still took care of a couple, of the families that insisted that they would only see me. So that's how I transitioned out of it. And, during that whole time, I was scared to death. I had a great business. I could have retired when I was 50, I'm sure. I would probably had 2 or 3 different dental offices the way I do things. And, so it was a scary deal. And we weren't making near as much money in fishing. We weren't at all. You don't as a tournament angler. We did have enough where I think we both thought we could make our house payments, and we didn't know what the future would hold. But Greg, at the time that we started, there was not one company that paid a dime to a fisherman north of the Mason-Dixon line.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's incredible.
Not one dime. So people cry how hard it is to get sponsorships today. It was just as hard, if not harder then. It was all about branding.
So yeah, what were you? I mean, what were those meetings like too? Like, people don't understand. Like, to be a successful, fisherman, whether you're a bass fisherman or walleye fisherman, on your level, the amount of meetings. I mean, you're having a lot of high end corporate meetings. You've got to be at the level that you've made it. People don't really get to see that side. They see the glamorous side of being a professional fisherman. They don't see the behind the scenes, working on deals and sponsor relationships. I mean, it takes a real skill to do that,
It does. And I think it takes a dedication to develop that skill too, which a lot of people don't want to do. A lot of anglers that are world-class anglers, even to this day, will go out and kick tail in a walleye tournament series all summer long. And then they disappear in the fall, they go hunting, and they don't work on their craft, and their craft being the business end of fishing. And we've seen that, Keith and I saw that our whole careers, which was, fortunate for us because we didn't mind working hard at it. It's just as much fun really as catching a big fish. And once you get to know it, but you don't get to know anything unless you dig into it and you start, working on that end of your craft. Chase and I are going to do a seminar in the NPAA this year. They're having it in Ohio in the fall, in October. And Gerald Swindle and Mike Iaconelli are going to be guest speakers too. But I would encourage anyone in the walleye end of things to come to this NPAA business. We're going to talk business. We're not going to talk fishing. I think everyone knows we know how to catch fish, and at a very high level. I think that one of the things I'd like to give back to the industry is maybe a little bit of knowledge of how to build those relationships that you're just talking about. How do you go about doing it? I'm going to talk about sliding scale contracts. I'm going to talk about things that we developed in working with sponsors. And I may even do a hardcore newsletter type thing in the future. We haven't decided, but that's part of what the Next Bite's going to do. And that's part of what our new Fish Wolves endeavor is going to do.
So yeah, talk about I want to, just get into a little bit about how, you started the Next Bite. So basically you and Keith have been working together with your own business, doing very well in tournaments. And this is, I guess we're talking 80s, 90s. you get into the late 90s, early 2000s, I guess it would be. I'm not sure exactly. I mean, obviously you need to tell this story, but the idea for the next bite, because at that, I mean, you guys were doing television. I met you guys because I was working at Bass Pro Shops video production department, and from 2000 to 2004 is when I worked there, and that's how we met. You guys were sponsored by Bass Pro Shops and Tracker Marine, and so we did a lot of television shows together. But, and you were doing other television also, not just, in articles and whatnot. So what was that? Okay, let's do our own TV show. Like, how did that all happen? And that's another just amazing aspect of your careers. I mean, it's not easy to just start up a television show, And here you are. How many? I mean, I was in on the very beginning of it, the first 2 seasons, and here we are. It's how many seasons now? It's incredible to see.
We're shooting our 18th or 19th season, right?
Yeah, congrats.
Yeah,
that really is a hell of an accomplishment. Again,
the world works in certain ways, and I've always felt that the good Lord was sitting over both of our shoulders and helping with some of this stuff, but I look back, and the way we got into TV was kind of a weird ball way. Keith, like I said, was very high level IBM program. And so he had a lot of contacts at IBM, and they were working on these media presentations that in today's world, you would look at PowerPoint, and some of the people within IBM were building these presentations. They're using laser disc players and integrating with computers and stuff like that. And so we felt that one of the strong points in those days is there were, especially in the North, there were not very many speakers. And there were a lot of sport shows, and, not near as many now, but there were a lot of venues where you could speak. And that was a major part of our income in those days. And probably not so much now, but we spoke a lot. And so we decided, just like, taking control of the photos and the magazine articles, we decided that we would build one of these cutting edge presentations. And so we took a lot of our tournament winnings and we invested into our business. We bought the computers, the laser disc players. Keith basically got them all working together, and he was fantastic that way. We literally, to give a presentation, all the equipment we used would barely fit in the back of a pickup truck. And so we would roll into these venues and we would give the presentations, and public could see nothing like it. I mean, we'd have live video. When I speak now, I'm not near as sophisticated now. I'm more storyteller, but in those days it was production. And we got invited to speak at a Bass Pro. And I don't know if it was at Springfield or whatever, wherever, I can't quite remember, but someone in their marketing department saw this presentation and they went, wow, this is unbelievable. You guys do this? And we said, yeah. And so we started doing presentations all over for Bass Pro, and we were sponsored by them. I basically got hired from that organization by a gentleman by the name of Kenny Burrows, and Kenny helped Johnny Morris run the boat division for years. He was the president of the boating division, and we had built boats with him back when he was the president of Skeeter. So we had a relationship with Ken. He's the one who hired us away from Skeeter. We came into, Tracker Marine at that time, and then a guy by the name, the head buyer at that time for Bass Pro, his name was Lynn Reeves, and then he's the one who hired us for Bass Pro. So then we started doing these seminars, and it kind of naturally went into, okay, Bass Pro decided they were going to do this show called Outdoor World. And they got all kinds of great bass fishermen, right? Kevin Van Dam has been a centerpiece there for years, not only one of the world's best bass anglers, but also one of the best people on television. And, you know, they had a bunch of really good, Bill Dance, and I mean, you name it, they had the bass personalities to do the bass part of the show. But they felt that we had enough talent in how we spoke and everything to do the freshwater segments other than bass for them, for their show. So we got to do all kinds of things. I fished the Snake River for sturgeon, and we did salmon shows in Alaska. And for 8 years, Keith and I hosted, those freshwater segments. And the one thing we didn't know about was muskies. So at that time, we encouraged Bass Pro to bring on Pete Mena. And so Pete, hosted a few of the muskie shows. And that's how we did it. Keith and I were actually quite busy. I mean, we did a number of shows a year. We're probably just as busy working for Bass Pro as we were on our own deal. And then about 8 years, like I said, it was about 8 years we did that. So that's where I learned TV, working with their video department and Steve Hargis. And that's where we met you and the guys working there. That's where that whole relationship came from. I'd make many, many trips a year to Springfield and, work with them a little bit tighter than what we do now. Although I think we're going to probably start working with them tighter on some projects in the future. My gut tells me that's what's going to happen. But the general end of things is they decided that they wanted to take the Outdoor World television show and consolidate it just into the bass world. That's what they were really good at. And they had pros that were the very best in the world. And so they wanted to concentrate their educational efforts more on bass fishing. And at the same time, though, they did not want to alienate the North. I mean, they were starting to have a pretty good presence in the North and with walleye anglers and things like that. So they said, hey, we know you guys have been wanting to do a show up there for a couple of years. We had started The Next Bite. It was just a website at that time. It had been going for a couple of years. And they said, we'll support it. We'll sponsor it. Well, Mercury was interested in sponsoring it. So with those two companies, as a solid foundation, then we started doing television on our own. And, I think in many ways we probably represented Bass Pro in the North. I know contracts spell out that we're not part of Bass Pro, and we're not. But in the same token, that company probably did more for my career than any other company. I have an extreme amount of loyalty with them. So the bottom line is I feel like, when we are messaging and doing things for the public and teaching people how to fish, that, Bass Pro has allowed me to do that. They were an integral part about, teaching me television and then allowing us to go in this direction.
So yeah, it's an impressive story to have a TV show on for that many seasons. There's not very many that have been on that long. Bill Dance, obviously, he's the king of fishing shows. There's been a few others that are called. Jimmy Houston's has been on longer. But boy, there's not many more than that. And you guys do, such a great job of education, and, the close-ups of baits are so important. To me, you guys have the best animation, 3D animation of any fishing show that's ever existed, as far as I'm concerned. And it's so important because, I've said this for, nearly probably all my career, is that, because I got introduced to 3D animation when I was at Bass Pro Shops, and how powerful it can be. And I made it a point to just say, hey, this is really important technology. Like this helps people understand what's going on below the water's surface. In our sport, the playing field a lot of times is invisible. You really gotta. So 3D animation, I've always felt, really, really helps if you can afford it, if you can have it in your productions. It really, really helps to tell that story in fishing. And when you're so based on education, it really helps. And so my hat's off to what you guys have done there for years and years and years. Again, it's to me, it's one of my favorite things about the Next Bite.
Well, thanks. Part of us really we used to pay for animations, animation by animation. And then you actually helped introduce us to a couple of young men. One of them was Joseph Bowie. And Joseph was just an extremely gifted artist and animator. And so he brought that genre into our shows, where it didn't cost me quite as much to, put animations in the shows. So we were able to take a theory that we were teaching to the public on television and then explain it through these animations, so that I think a lot of fishermen could understand, okay, that's why you do this, or that's why you make that motion with your jigging arm. This is what happens underwater. And that young man really helped a lot with that. And, Dusty Hoy was our main editor. A lot of people don't know, you edited and started the show with us, and did the shooting and editing for years, and then had some other really fantastic opportunities. But you're the one who got us involved with these two young guys. And for years, they worked pretty closely with us. We brought another guy in then, Jeremy Hinkmeyer, and Joseph taught him a lot of animation. And then, ultimately the world changes, right? Joseph decided that he wanted to go a different direction. Jeremy's with us right now. He's the lead animator. He's an extremely talented guy. The times changed. Dusty's not with us either. He's gone a different direction. And so we have we've got a homegrown people right now that are producing the show. They're producing it at Discovery Channel quality standards. So that's, it's a kudos to all of the guys that work with us through the years, because they teach each other, right?
No doubt.
And they allow some fantastic end results as far as television goes.
Yeah, no, I for me, it's one of the great joys of my career to have worked with you guys, and to me, I've said this for a long time, life is really, you can't take anything with you. You know what I mean? When you're done with this life, it's not like you can take all your, fancy house, the boat, the car, and all this stuff, To me, it's about experiences. It's, and I look back as a fan of fishing. I've been a fan of fishing. I've been passionate about fishing. This is my thing. This is my sport. And to develop friendships with you, guys that I've looked up with as a young kid, and then to have had great experiences with you, to like things that we've shared together on the road. And really, to me, that is, I really look back on those moments, those times that we've had. Those are really, I cherish them very much. Maybe that's just as you get older, that happens. That life is a bit more fragile than you realize when you're a kid. Like don't take this.
They start tearing up on us.
Well, you don't take. I mean, I'm just saying, I just don't take this stuff for granted. And just even having our conversation right now, I really, I'm really honored that you would take the time to talk, and I don't take relationships like this for granted. It's to me very special. So I mean, that might be kind of corny to say, but I did want to say it to you, Gary.
Well, you nailed it. You hit the nail right on the head. I feel the same way. I look back at all the relationships I've had with people during the years, and the timing of things, and all the experiences that came as an end result of that. It's been quite the ride. And, I'm hoping that ride lasts longer for me and for you and for the people that we're involved with. It's just amazing to me to see how this industry has changed and how it's grown. And, the participation from anglers, how more and more and more people are really getting into fishing. I mean, it is astounding to me how that's coming along right now. So it's pretty cool to be part of all that. It really is.
Well, you've been tremendously generous with your time here. I don't know how much time you have. I want you to just tell me, like, I've got a few more things to ask you if you have time, but let me know if you.
I've got time for you, Greg. I don't do a lot of interviews with outside the Next Bite crew anymore, but we worked together for a long time. So this is an opportunity to maybe tell a little bit of my story too. The behind the scenes stuff that people don't know. People have got bits and pieces, but they don't know, the whole thing. I've had so many things change in my life. My lifelong business partner, Keith, comes up to me a year ago and says, I want to retire from TV. My jaw, I kind of thought it might happen, but my jaw hit the floor. It's like, I want to talk about a life-changing deal. There's
no doubt. No doubt.
And so it's, a lot of those things people don't get to see and they don't get to hear about. And this is kind of nice and refreshing to have someone who knows a little bit of my background asking these types of questions.
Well, this is why I really, it's funny. I loved radio just as much as television production. I had a radio show in college, and that's why I chose broadcasting as a major. Mm-hmm. I love radio conversations, and the beauty of podcasting is that you can have these more long form conversations where you can just let things happen. You don't have to worry about time constraints. Oh my God, I got, and if whoever you're talking with has some time and is okay with it, just you can talk about things that just in the traditional way of broadcasting, you're always worried about, oh, we only have so much time, this segment's only this long, Yep. Or things the term organic is used too often, I guess, but organically, still going to use it. Organically, things, you can just let conversations happen, very naturally. So I love this format where, people listening, they can hear a different part of you, and get to know you better. I think podcasting, this long form kind of format, it does allow for that. And I've always just loved that. That about me. I've loved that kind of behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, you're a reality based guy.
Yeah.
You always wanted to do. This is the ultimate reality. It basically, you don't know where the conversation's really going to lead. And that's what you've always liked. That's,
yeah. And so it's
you that's
yeah. But for many times, just me being on these shoots with you and I've crashed. I'm pretty sure I've crashed right behind you on the sofa back there before with your dogs.
With dogs jumping on you.
Yeah. I mean, I just cherish that stuff, and that behind the scenes stuff too. Like, there's been many times going on these shoots where I'm like, oh man, if people could see, how this is all happening, and it's very interesting. And I've felt very lucky to have those moments. Really, I just wish I could be able to share those too, more. But to me, so. If there's a lot of people, you're talking about how there's a lot of people getting into the sport, getting into fishing, walleye fishing, just all forms of fishing, whatever it be. I definitely seen that too. In high school, I really didn't feel like fishing was very cool. This was in the 90s. And so I kind of hit it in some ways. I was living in California, and I'm not proud that I was, but I was acting like I was playing volleyball and surfing, which I really didn't do either of those, at least very well, So to see now, like the Guggen squad and these kids, I've worked with one of them before, Alex Perrick. I mean, he brought essentially a groupie with him on a shoot, and he's like in his, I don't know, his early 20s at the most, and because he's got this huge fishing following. What are your what are your thoughts on kind of the new future of the fishing medium, the future of fishing, these young kids? Like, what's your thoughts on everything going on right now?
I love it. It became cool to fish. I can remember when my son was very young, people would come up and ask for my autograph, and one day he just kind of had enough, Dad, let's go. And people are wanting to autograph. And he said right out to one person, he says, he's just a fisherman. It's not like he's a football player. And I'll never forget that, and that's Chase. I mean, he's made his career in fishing, and a pretty good one. It is but in those days, that's the way fishing was looked at. It wasn't that cool. the coolness factor is starting to catch hold. It really is. And you can see it day by day. And you can see some of the young YouTubers, growing their audiences and stuff. Some of the messaging that they give, I'm not real, pleased with. I think that they teach some crap stuff.
Yeah.
And I think at times they do hit the nail on the head. I personally have always got my information from high-end tournament people. If I want to learn how to bass fish, I'm going to talk to Ott Defoe and Edwin Evers and Kevin Van Dam and Bill Dance. Even though, Bill might not be on the cutting edge of tournaments anymore, he's always around those people. And he has that history, part of him that is important. And that's basically who I'm going to learn from. Or a regional guy that has a reputation that's stellar and he knows the bodies of water that you fish. He's a person that becomes extremely important in you learning the right things. I'm a real believer in learning the right things. And it's easy in fishing to get into bad habits and to do things the wrong way. There's a lot of ways to catch fish. That's never going to end. But, in certain classification of baits, I've seen it forever. You get a general magazine that will talk about classification of baits, and maybe only 2 baits in the whole darn works actually catch fish really well, at least really good, tournament, meaningful baits where the guys are fishing them to make a living. The rest of the stuff is just copycat stuff. And we have a lot of that in the fishing industry. So there's all kinds of traps that beginning people can fall into. Again, I lean towards the tournament guys. I don't think that they're the end all. I think there's some really good high-end guides and some guys that have built good reputations, like I said, regionally. I'm not saying that the YouTubers are full of crap, because I think some of them bring some really cool things to the table. I think that the one thing about every guy or group that is a YouTuber is they love to fish. So they spend a tremendous amount of time on the water. And that's always the thing where if you spend a ton of time on the water, you will learn. And you'll be able to take your experiences and share them with people and help them out. And so I look at it how the world's changed, and I like it all. I like it from, the YouTube crowd to the TV crowd to the people who just like to go out and they're learning how to fish. I think that the growth in fishing to me is a tremendous, tremendous deal. I'd like to think that was part of that a little bit, but it's a nationwide phenomenon right now, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm seeing the same thing. What's weird about the YouTube deal, and when I first really kind of learned about YouTube was in 2015. Dave Lefebvre, I was filming a Major League Fishing event, and I was paired with him to film him that day. And we had just talked. I mean, one of the great things about this job, as a videographer, when you're filming, tournaments or just fishing in general, is that, you're spending a whole day with someone and you really get to know someone really well, especially if they see that you're a fisherman. And so Dave was like, I think he had seen one of our, another fishing shows, and he said, do you know what's happening on YouTube? And this is in 2015. And I go, no, I mean, people are putting videos up there, but that's about all I know about it. In fact, we had put videos up there. Well, he let me know that no, people were putting very basic videos up on YouTube and making a living at it. And my mind just was blown. I was like, I don't even understand, even to this day, I got to admit, I just, some of the YouTube channels, and partly it's because of, I do this for a living, some of them I just can't get into it because it's one, I come from a background, a television background where everything is pretty complex, multiple angles, color correcting, everything's got to be perfect. And to see just one angle and for someone to have countless subscribers, I couldn't wrap my head around it until probably just recently. I think what's happening on YouTube as opposed to television, it's like, I think YouTube is a much more potentially intimate experience in a way. They're holding it with their phone. They're just looking at it. And it doesn't even matter if it's just a chesty video. People, at least in the case of YouTube, it's like people just want to be almost like just taken along for a trip. You know, it's really bizarre, but I've had to like rethink, you know, what's going on, at least in that realm of the fishing, you know, business or whatever.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the feeling is more intimate, and it's more, hey, I get that. I could do that. You know, that's me. And when I go fishing, that's how I act. And, you know, I think that's part of it. I think sometimes these guys stretch it a little bit. They do a lot of goofy shit that, you know,
trust me,
pardon my French, but they do stuff just to gain those viewers.
Yeah.
And
yes.
And some of them are so successful. You look at how many people are watching their videos, and your jaw drops. You know, we have a YouTube channel with The Next Bite, and you know, I can have Jason Shakira do a world-class tip, and we get views, and the views that we get are from hardcore anglers that want to learn more. But a kid could do a goofy thing and just blow the views out of the water and get these huge followings. And if you're a pretty looking woman, you're going to really, let's just go there. You're going to have hundreds of thousands of views.
It's true.
And you know, God bless them.
Show their derriere in the thumbnail, Gary. It's a sure bet you're going to get, you know, just show that derriere in the thumbnail and it's a sure bet you'll get countless.
Yeah. Well, more power to them. You know, I wish I looked that good. But it's like, the bottom line is there's a lot of ways to do things now. And all of them work to some extent. And I actually enjoy all of them. You know, the YouTube mystery to me is it's kind of the same to me, but yet every year we get a bigger and bigger following. And to be real truthful, some of these live streaming videos are starting, you know, and some of the streaming things that we do, like on Waypoint TV, they rival television numbers. And
is that right? No kidding.
Yeah, they're starting to do that. You know, the industry doesn't recognize them very much and want to pay for the stuff. But you know, I think the industry itself knows that television costs money, and so that if they want to be on television, they've got to spend some dollars. So that part, all the inner logistics and the business end of things are that way. But some of the YouTube, you know, the Guggen Squad is a perfect example. These guys did a lot of crazy crap in the beginning, but they did a lot of teaching. Then all of a sudden they get, you know, hooked up with some of the world-class anglers they have right now, Jacob Wheeler and some of these guys, and you know, let's go. That train has left the station, and they're becoming a very, very powerful and influential group. And they also teach an awful lot of people how to fish. And so these kids were smart enough to know, hey, the goofy stuff only gets us so far. It got us a lot of viewers. But now we're tied into the experts in the field too, and we're showing a combination of things. When we do stuff right now, we entertain. We give everybody something for their time to view us. And I look at that group of kids right now, and they're jaw-dropping. The way that they started and the way that they have developed, you know, we've been in business for 19 years. Those guys have numbers that blow us out of the water.
It's incredible. Like the internet, like what it, you know, what it could potentially, you know, afford, you know, like those guys were the original adopters. I look at it this way. They were they were the first to really, you know, in the fishing side of YouTube, to really have a lot of videos. They were just doing it for fun. They were doing chesty videos. And when YouTube blew up, it really worked out for them. And there's a few others too, not, you know, outside the Guggen Squad with a similar kind of story. It's really impressive. It's not like, I don't know how anybody could have predicted it. I think about this often. I kind of beat myself up a little bit, just not seeing YouTube, even investing in it in any way, like just to see what it's become. But Lord, I don't know how you would have predicted any of it too. You know, how could you have predicted that?
Can change tomorrow, Greg.
Right.
That's the whole thing is the one thing I have learned with being in the media world for as many years is things change pretty quickly. And in many cases, if you're the first, group doing it, you can gain some traction and get, much bigger viewership. But who knows what the world will bring? Dusty quite just as well as I do. Dusty was our chief video editor for years, a stickler for detail, right? He just was always a stickler for detail. But he's doing things right now with virtual reality and stuff that, he always dabbled in the high tech stuff, and he's going the route of where he loves. But there's no doubt there could be, in the future, we may be looking at totally different things. I mean, heck, Elon Musk is building robots where you could get a robot to do all the menial tasks in your house and fish more. And
right.
We don't know where the future is going to go. And that's been a pretty cool part of my life, as I've seen so many changes, and I've never really, I don't feel like I've gotten locked down into one way of doing things. I like watching the progress. I like watching and studying what's going on. And, some cool things are happening right now.
Well, you have a very, technical mind. I think that's why your career, your walleye career, it's got to be one of the reasons why you've been so darn good. It's attention to detail. Not everybody, I'm telling you, I don't have that mind, Gary. Like I couldn't have done what you did in school, done what you did with your dental practice, made that transition. That is not a very common tool set in someone's brain to be able to, and it's the same with that. Put Kavaius there too, like being that IBM, that analytical mind, both you guys going into walleye fishing and just, in fishing in general, like, you have to have that kind of, I guess you could call it like an imagination to a certain extent to go, okay,
part of it.
The fish, like, how do I present a bait to those fish that are over there or under me or what? And then you're also like, how are they, what kind of mood are they in? What size line is better to present the bait a certain, there's all that stuff that comes into it. And then in walleye fishing, there's so many techniques. Really, as far as to be a proficient walleye angler, trolling, long rods, lead core, on and on and on.
If you're a techie, walleyes are your gig. There's no doubt about it. I've always said they act like, bass or crappies. Sometimes you catch them in 6 inches of water. Sometimes they're out over 150 feet suspended and thinking they're salmon. They don't care. And they're probably the most versatile sort of freshwater fish in the world, quite frankly. They do so many different things. So if you kind of like figuring that out, then, that's the game fish for you. I look at some of the young people who are stars in the sport. I'll take Corey Sprengel, for example. If you spend any amount of time with him, he is so meticulous. It's unbelievable in how he approaches the sport. Jason Shakira. When you meet Jason, he's a kind of easygoing sort of guy, but when he gets down to fishing, those small details are, he's a library full of them. It's unbelievable. Tommy Kimos, all the guys that are hosts of The Next Bite are that way. And any other top tournament anglers, a Max Wilson, as goofy as he can be sometimes on film. And Max would laugh when I said that about him. So I'm not taking a shot at him because I think the kid is one of the best young talents out there. But you don't know what he's going to do next. He's almost like a Mike Iconelli in a way on the walleye end of things. But when you get to know Max, he's very, very meticulous. And he really looks at his fishing from a very meticulous standpoint. Isaac Lackish, another young star coming up, who's been winning a lot of events. His mind is like a steel trap when it comes to the fishing part of things. So I think all of those types of people have that in common on the walleye end of things. You see the walleye guys expanding out into smallmouth bass fishing now. There's a group of us that fish the Sturgeon Bay Open. We've all been in the top 3. We've won a lot of money doing that. Jason and his son and John Hoyer just went over and fished one of those Bass Pro Shop Opens to try to get into the $1 million tournament. Hoyer was second out of 250 boats on St. Clair, and Jason was 5th. They'd never seen St. Clair and never fished bass on St. Clair in their lives.
Wow.
And so I honestly think that the walleye anglers, if they apply themselves and learn each species of fish, I think it'd be hard pressed for other anglers to be able to run with them. I really do. I've always felt that way in my life. And it's not that, you're trying to pound your chest to say, I'm better than everybody. That's not the case. It's the nature of the beast of the fish. You nailed it when you first said that about walleyes, is they are a finicky son of a rip. And they live in every single thing, position in a lake that you can imagine if you go from lake to lake. And so the techniques that you need to learn, try to figure out how to catch them are just, we'll never know all of them. We just won't.
Yeah. Yeah.
First time I threw a shiver minnow out, I looked at that bait and it was like, what in the hell kind of action is that? And I just happened to pick the right stroke when I jigged it. And it opened up a whole new world to summertime fishing for walleyes that nobody knew about. And how many more of those things could happen with that fish? I mean,
and that's just
happened every few years in my lifetime. And so why not someone else's lifetime too,
Oh, no doubt. And that's the beauty of fishing too, is that there's so many things that, and something will pop up. You're like, I would have never thought of that, or that's amazing. It opened up a whole new world, and it's one of the great things I love about fishing. But I wanted, I don't want to take up too much more of your time here, Gary, but I wanted to, try to provide a bit of a window into how you've managed some of your relationships with sponsors. And I think maybe the best example of that would be your relationship with Berkley through the years. Yeah. And it's one of I love Berkley. It's maybe my all-time favorite fishing company. I fell in love with power bait when I was 17 years old. I learned then at a small quarry in southern Minnesota how effective power bait was. It just tripped the triggers of these smallmouth bass in this quarry, and I was using just regular plastic worms. They were like, whatever. I put on a power bait and it was like night and day. From then on, I've been a true believer in power bait, but also just I love Berkley just in general. But tell me like how that relationship developed. And then you guys have worked so closely with that company to develop products. And I think it's super interesting, especially now, to see how they primarily were known as like more soft baits, but they have really, with you guys doing the flicker minnow, and then now just in general, their hard bait selection is just impressive. And so they did their hooks, everything. Just talk about the Berkley as your relationship with that company.
Yeah, this is kind of a cool story. And again, sometimes you have the good Lord, not sometimes. The good Lord sits on everyone's shoulders. And I think everyone that's alive can look at times where you go, wow, that happened. And it was weird why it happened. But I truly believe that way. And Keith and I had worked with Storm Lures for years. And the Storm family, and it was a family company, Storm family had some really good walleye lures. And they were a southern-based company, and they didn't realize even what they had for walleyes. They knew the Hottentots were good on Saginaw Bay. That's when I started working for them. That was the extent of what the family knew about walleye baits. They had a bait called the Thunderstick Junior that when we started fishing it, we started catching walleyes all over the place. So personally, both Keith and I, again, being analytical and things that we do, we looked at actions of crankbaits really heavy duty. And I felt that we had a pretty good handle on, I could look at a bait in the water and think, that'll be a good bait. or that one won't be very well, a real good bait. And sometimes the fish would fool me. I'd go buy a bunch of new baits that I'd like to try, and they looked really good to me, and I never could get a bite from a walleye on them, So the successes and failures through the years of trolling crankbaits, so many hours, tens of thousands of hours. And so basically I had some knowledge there. We helped the Storm family, make the two of us and Gary Gray, which is a local guy. He's now passed, but Gary was from the Lake Winnebago area. We helped Storm become a powerhouse in the upper Midwest. Their sales were extremely good, to the point where the Big Daddy company, Rapala, probably didn't like what was going on, because it was pretty hardcore competition, And so Rapala bought them. So we went with, Keith and I went with the transition. We were with Rapala and Storm for, 4, 5, 6 years, but that was right when we started the TV show too. And so we want to do those high-tech animations. So this story gets to be a little bit long, but it all fits together so beautifully. It's kind of a neat thing to learn. And I don't know if I ever really told the public. I've told people, how this went, but it shows you kind of the side of business also, right?
No.
And again, that's what this NPAA thing is going to be about. We're going to talk about hardcore business, stuff that maybe people are afraid of. I mean, I don't think any of my companies are going to fire Chase and I. I don't believe that they will, not if I'm telling the true stories and stuff like that. It is what it is. And, I've been blessed by working with a lot of good companies. And so I go back to that, and we were building these animations, right? But yet I couldn't get Rapala Storm / that company to support us with any advertising. And when you go on doing a professional television show, it's expensive. You have to buy the airtime. You have to do all the production. So that means you're going on the road. If you have a shooter, you're paying them on a per day basis at the very least. Maybe they're your employee. It's expensive. And if you don't have any help from the companies where you're actually teaching people how to use their products and how to catch fish with their things, it gets to be frustrating, to say the least. So part of working with the companies is sitting down and having heart-to-heart talks with them and saying, this is what I'd like to do. This is what I think that we can bring to the table. And, most of the time you're going to get a no, but once in a while you'll get a yes, and you'll have an opportunity at that point in time. If you get a yes, take advantage of it, take care of your company. But we were doing these cool animations, and I figured at that time, when we did a small animation in the TV show, I figured that our cost was around $2,000. And so the show's in business for a couple of years, and I still can't get Rapala to advertise with the show. And I get it, they were advertising with the Linders and things like that. So business is business. But I went back and I had asked if we could maybe have a non-exclusive with them, because my personal contracts weren't that great. And, there was a much bigger picture here, right? With television and us building the business that we were with Bass Pro and Mercury Support and, all that kind of stuff is, we were building a pretty big deal. I wasn't looking at anything small with the show from the very beginning. Having Ron and Al Linder as my friends, they encouraged us to build this show too. And we're good friends to this day. And, so that's what we were trying to do. I just won an award from them for being the best promoter in the United States for storm lures. They gave me the award in January. I asked if we could get some advertising help. And a little bit later in the year, they said, well, we're not going to advertise with the show. And we've reevaluated our relationship. If you guys are consistent in doing this television show, then we don't think you'll be able to do a good job for us if you're going to start going non-exclusive. And I went, really? I mean, we use your stuff and it's good stuff. And we're teaching people how to use it. No, we're going to let you go. So at that time, I was about ready to cry. we're doing this big business we thought was big business in our minds, right? And it had been on national television for a couple of years. And here's a company that we'd been with, Storm, I'd been with them like 16 years at that time. And now we're gone. We're just floating around. But what they can't take away from you, when you have bad things happen like that, or what you consider as bad, was a decision they made as a company that they felt was the right decision at that time. So I look back, I can't fault them for that. But what they can't take away from you is your knowledge base. And if you study fishing as much as some of these anglers do, and again, I like Jacob Wheeler because he's like a mechanical genius, right? Every little thing he does is thought out, but he thinks kind of like I do. I love that. I love that because he's going to be able to build some tremendous baits and stuff in the future. When he gets into a conversation with a company, if that company truly believes in him, he's going to really change fishing. KVD's done it. Kevin is one of the experts in bass fishing, but he also knows a lot about the things that he does every day. He studies, and then he can bring that to the company, right? Well, Keith and I decided that we would try, since we use so many different baits, that we would go to the big ICAST meeting and we would try to get small sponsorships and television commitments for medium to low dollars, but we would go non-exclusive. The industry doesn't like non-exclusivity, but that being said, we had a good enough reputation for trolling. We were considered probably the experts in hard bait trolling in the North, right? We helped offshore design their boards and on and on. A lot of the articles we did pertain to that. And so we actually had like 4 companies that were willing to work with us and on the show too. And we went into Berkeley and they had some baits that they were building in the Frenzy series, a few baits that we liked. We used them on lead core and explained to the guys at Berkeley, what we wanted to do. We wanted to talk about those baits. So we were wondering if they'd be interested in a non-exclusive arrangement. They said, well, we would like you to build baits, but we don't want to do a non-exclusive. We don't want to do where it's non-exclusive. We want to work with you on an exclusive basis. And I said, the guy that I was talking to at the time was Ron. His name was Ron. I said, Ron, it'll be an expensive deal for you. It means full-blown television advertising on a national television show. It means, personal contracts for the tournament end of things that we do. And, I'm to the point where I'm not going to give away my knowledge anymore. I need a royalty on things that we do. Keith and I both feel that way. And so he says, we're a big boy company, Gary. He said, we will do this. And so we walked out of that show not knowing what was going to happen. We had a kind of an excited feeling, but we didn't know. It's like, oh man, the non-exclusive thing might have worked really well. What is this going to mean for the TV show? What we want to do, our dreams are all kind of on the line, right? Because this is pretty big. Berkeley, they got a lot of categories. They got line, and I had been with them for line and soft plastics, and had developed some baits with them in the soft plastics. And just as a sidebar for just a second, everyone's crazy about the Ned rig, right? That's the big deal. We built a product called the jig worm way before the Ned rig even was talked about. And the jig worm had a cult following in the walleye world. John Prochnow from Berkeley, Keith and I built that bait. I got royalties on it. And that bait was out 25 years ago. And so, there are things that come from the walleye world that sometimes, at least in soft plastic, we were.
Oh, no doubt.
And
no doubt.
It caught fish just as well as Ned rig does now. You put it on a jig head, that's how we fished it, and cast it or vertical jig it, whatever you wanted. It slaughtered fish. And I can remember going down and catching spotted bass down south in a big Mercury event with George Cochran. And George had just won the Bassmaster Classic. And I probably caught 30 fish in a row on this little bait. And he said, what are you using? So I showed him, and, I don't know if he used something like that when he was tournament fishing after that or not, but it was like, but anyway, we did have some history with Berkeley. So that's one of the reasons why there was some trust on the hard bait end of things, but we had never been with them with hard baits. And they told us, when we sat down with meetings, they told us, we've tried to build hard baits for a couple times now. And in the grand scope of the business, we don't think that we were all that successful. And the frenzy thing was, they felt like it was coming to an end. And so I looked at them and I said, let's analyze this industry. The biggest player in hard baits is Rapala. But would you all agree? And they said, yeah. I said, look at the baits they have. Those baits catch all species of fish. They weren't designed just to catch bass. Bass bite them because bass are pretty aggressive and they'll bite a lot of baits. I said, but if you want to look at a common denominator, if a walleye doesn't bite the bait, then it's only going to be a good bass bait. It won't be a multi-species type bait. So you have to change your thinking. You have to open the window to a much larger window. You want to have and be building a bait that all species love to bite. So that goes right down into an action thing. And so you have to build a bait with proper actions. And so we talked to Berkeley about philosophy and time windows. If you build the right bait, the fish will start biting it in April, and they'll continue biting it all the way through the course of the year. If it's too high of an action bait, they might only bite it in July and August when the fish's metabolism is up. So when we started building baits with Berkeley that would have a big window, a big bite window. Okay. And that's why we picked the Flicker Shad series. I felt that we could build a better shad bait with a little bit different action than anyone had. I just had that feeling. And when we started doing the R&D, it happened. Berkeley built the plastic bodies and gave them to me. And I went out every day on the turtle flambeau flowage with a Dremel tool, and I worked with the baits. I cut stuff out. I ruined a lot of baits. But I finally got one that caught the living crap out of fish. And it outfished every other bait I tried against it. And so I went back to Berkeley and I said, here it is. And then they said, well, we don't want that shape on our lip. I said, well, you got to have it. I just spent, almost a year getting the right shape to it so it give you the right action. I said, we can duplicate that action. He said, I firmly believe that I can build a bait here that'll give you the exact same action. And I said, okay, then I challenge you to do that. And it was one of their engineers in the business. And something, he did it. That team did it. There's a team of 2 or 3 guys and gals that were working on that. And they basically did it to the point where we measure actions. That was how we started developing this program with Berkeley. And I could not tell the difference in the water. We couldn't tell the difference in video. So they actually did it. And they did it through weighting and a whole bunch of other things. A bait that I hand built, right? And with their help. It wasn't all Gary Parsons. Well, then Keith is like the technical guy in the group. Keith would go out and test these baits and troll with them and fish them against other companies' baits. We did that for a long time. Every single size of flicker, that's how we built them. We worked extremely closely with their engineering team. Now, I don't think anyone in the country ever did anything like this before, other than maybe Laurie Rapala with his family when he first built the original Rapala. But that's the type of dedication and commitment that, the whole Berkeley team then bought into the philosophy. And so now we're working as a unit together, fishermen on the water with the scientists inside the company to build this Flicker series and family. I truly believe Flicker's family is probably the biggest family of crankbaits selling in the world right now. It's tremendous how that family has grown. And every single model that we come out with since has that same type of dedication. The hit stick, years to develop that thing. But it's got we can make the action even higher frequency than balsa if we want, with the technology that we work with Dan Spangler and his crew and Keith Olstrom, and they have a crew of scientists and engineers in that building that are second to none. They're fabulous.
I believe it. I'm super impressed with what they're coming out with, you know, here lately.
And they're doing the same thing now in the bass world. They've learned so much on how to manipulate the bait shapes and stuff through these years because they take meticulous notes on all of it. So now you've got a 12-year track record of how to build a bait step by step. They can make a bait do whatever they want. And so when they work with a Hank Cherry, for example, and Hank wants that bait to do this and this and this, that Berkeley team, and in particular Dan Spangler, who I'm going to give kudos to because the guy's a fisheries biologist and a scientist that's extraordinary. That Berkeley team builds the bait that gives Hank his action. And Hank takes it out then and he can test it and make sure it's doing what he does. And he goes out then and takes this brand new bait, it's not even on the market yet, it's coming out now, and wins the Bassmaster Classic with it. So that's the type of background that Berkeley has in hard baits. And I'm proud to have been part of that because Keith and I kind of taught that mentality and that the testing and all the things that it takes to get it right. We help teach that to those engineers and scientists. You know, I'd worked with Doc Jones and John Prochnow on the soft bait end of things for years, but I really never did get a whole lot. I don't know anything about the chemicals that those guys put in their baits. I helped a little bit with some shapes, you know, the 3-inch minnow Keith and I built at the same time as we built the jig worm. And, you know, Corey's building some baits with them and stuff right now. But the hard bait thing is a whole different ballgame. Those guys really know their stuff with soft plastics and they can build shapes and stuff however they want and do what they want. But the hard bait game is a different game. You know, you see it. These companies come out and they start advertising, well, this is going to be the latest, greatest thing. And then you never hear a word about it after about 6 months. Everybody buys one and then they find out they just don't catch fish the way that everybody said they would. When Berkeley says we've got a new bait, you better pay attention because that bait has been tested for a long time. It does probably catch fish better than any of the competitors out there, if not better, pretty much equal to. And so, you know, that's the mentality they have. It's a take no prisoners mentality and let's build the best products on earth.
It's a really impressive company. And really, I mean, honestly, you could just go, you know what? I'm just going to buy Berkeley everything and really, in many respects, be completely outfitted with everything you need for a lot of freshwater fish species.
Well, you could. There's a lot of baits that still are really good baits built by various other companies. You know, the thing is Berkeley is a big company. So when they come out with products, they have to try to get sales where to make sense for them because they're so big. It has to be attractive to many species of fish now. They've kind of, even when I'm building a walleye bait, we're building it also for the bass. I've got a bait coming out next year. Corey and I do a hard bait, and I'm going to just drop the dime on it. It might be the best bass bait that they ever built. It's a possibility because we started out as a walleye bait with some smaller sizes, and we built some bigger sizes. Started going, oh my God, we can't keep the bass off these baits, and so that's kind of the way we think now. Let's build baits that can catch many species of fish. Maybe they're stronger with walleyes here with this style, but they might be stronger with bass here, but they're going to catch more species of fish. And, you know, Stunna catches a lot of walleyes. Hit sticks catch a lot of bass. And so that's the mentality that they have. It's a bigger mentality. So that means that there's a lot of places like in a region where maybe there's a specialized bait that another company can build. Or if they want to build like Berkeley does, they're just going to have to spend the time for R&D. They can't go to China and just build these things. You know, grab some pretty thing off the shelf and then bring it back to the States and say, here's your new bait. It's not going to work. This company doesn't do business that way. They do business the scientific way, which is awesome. And I love working with them.
It really is awesome. They've got the science thing down. I've always loved it. I was sold, like I said earlier, with the power bait and the science behind that. So it's not a gimmick. It's the real deal. I've seen it firsthand time and time again. It's the real deal. So, and just now with their hard baits, their terminal tackle, their hooks. I mean, it's a super impressive company. But I did want to just pick your brain on two more things. Just what are the walleye trends that are happening right now that you're seeing, trends in the industry? What excites you? What do you think is kind of maybe around the pike, or just in general, your thoughts on trends happening right now?
Well, I think that the sport has changed quite a bit in the last 5 years, and maybe even a little bit longer, with the advent of the GPS spot lock, anchor lock type trolling motors that are out there. Walleye anglers now have adapted to a lot of casting techniques. And so that was the start of it. In the summer months, trolling was the big deal, right? Fish spread out on flats. They do all kinds of different things, cover a lot of water. The mathematics end of things say you cover more water, you contact more fish, you catch more fish, and, you win tournaments or you have a better day on the water. I think that one of the trends we're seeing is the casting techniques, where instead of trolling over the tip of a point back and forth, if you can handle that boat position and concentrate on fishing, let that trolling motors keep you there in a 2 to 3 foot wave, which is a lot of places where we fish, it's big water and rough, as you well know. But instead of having to, do at least half your concentration on boat control, that takes it out of the equation for you. And you can concentrate on fishing. I'm seeing more and better baits designed for casting. So I think that will continue. And whether that's soft plastics or hair jigs, John Hoyer is a great example. He's taken the Champ Swimmer, which was designed originally as a bass bait, and he's shown that it's a bait for every species. Walleyes can't resist it, the way he fishes it. It's a kind of cutting edge stuff, different style paddle tail with a very specific way to fish it. But he's won a lot of tournaments with it, won a lot of money doing that. And so I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. Now you look at the forward positioning electronics, Lowrance's Active Target, Garmin's, unit, and they really do look forward. There's no screwing around. They look forward and there's 2 fish and you can cast to them. And I think the walleye guys have taken that even further than the bass guys. The bass guys use it predominantly in shallower water, right? This is the nature of the beast. But we're using a lot in 30, 35 feet of water and seeing fish that are on the bottom, up off the bottom, off in front of you. You can cast to them. If I'm pulling creek chubs or, live bait or even trolling, I can literally now scan in front of the boat and see those fish and pull my baits right over the top of them. So it's changing the sport. And, I think that technology will continue on. I think you're going to start seeing forward-facing sonar and maybe even surround sonars or back-facing sonars. I think that's going to mature into a big, big part of all fishing, but walleye guys will help lead the charge there because sometimes we're fishing like bass in super shallow water. Sometimes we're fishing, in deeper water. We like to, a lot of us in the north, fish smallmouth. We've got the best smallmouth fisheries probably in the world up here. And so same thing, when those fish drop down to 18, 25 feet, you can see them so easy with these sonars and work with them. So that's changing. That's exciting. That's new. It's fun to play around with. And then on top of it, you've got some of the trolling things going on, more precision trolling. The trolling motors help with that. We've seen, the transition into lithium batteries and brushless trolling motors where you could start getting a lot more power, a lot more maneuverability. the boats themselves are getting so comfortable to fish in that instead of going out for 3 hours, it's pretty, 8 hours fly by like it's nothing. So with all that, I think we're going to see, we are seeing more fishing pressure. Fishing has become cool now, right, Greg? And that coolness factor means there's a lot more pressure on the fisheries. So I think we're going to have to start looking seriously at more catch and release situations, maybe reduced limits to preserve our resource. I think that in the grand scope of things, people have to be smart. If you catch every single fish, my dad always used to say, I'm not going to quit fishing until every hook on the graph is gone. Well, that's the old man's mentality, right? He's passed, God bless his soul. Taught me a lot through the years, but that mentality is out the window. And there are a lot of people in my age group that still feel that way. Fortunately, I like the young guys. A lot of them start looking a little bit more responsible to these fisheries, but I think it can be taken further. And if the states have to step in and reduce limits, I don't necessarily think the slot sizes and stuff are a big deal, but there's no one that needs to be taking home 25 and 50 crappies in one outing. There's no one that needs to be taking even 5 walleyes. It just, it is. People
Agreed.
are maybe jump down my throat for that, Greg, but
No, I
that's
agree.
the way I feel. I've always looked to the future of the sport. And I never just looked at walleyes. I always tried to look at the big picture. What's going on in the fishing part of it? What's going on in the media part of it? What's going to be the future? That's the way I think. And I think we have to be more responsible because we've got a boon of new fishermen.
No doubt.
Record boat sales, record motor sales. Mercury can't even build them fast enough. On top of it, you've got some technical problems with chips and all the stuff that we see in the country today, and we've got some other real problems. But people go fishing if they, COVID was a great example. Well, everyone went fishing.
That's right.
And didn't have all the time. We had to take off of work because of COVID, right? Well, they all went fishing. Let's just get real.
Yeah.
Because that's what happened.
Yep.
And that's what's going on. There are a lot of young people that all of a sudden found out, holy man, fishing's more fun than these damn video games. And,
Absolutely.
And it's starting to catch hold in a big way. Fishing's on fire, man. You can quote that.
Oh,
let's take it into the future because it's the truth.
And so, with that being said, and we can end it on this wonderful conversation, which I've really enjoyed. This has been fantastic.
I have too. I mean, I've been able to tell some stories here that.
It's wonderful. This is everything I'd hoped it'd be, Gary. This is why I love having conversations like this. So with these new anglers coming online, so to speak, what, especially an aspiring tournament angler, tournament walleye angler, just in general, someone who wants to be, aspiring pro fisherman, what advice would you give them?
Well, you're going to need to own your craft. Jason Shakirat's son is a perfect example, Jay Shakirat. Jay is young. I think he's 22 now, and he wins almost every league event that he fishes. He wins a lot of the local events, and he didn't do that by just going into this casually. He did it because he's possessed. He's possessed with bass. His father is a multiple world champion walleye angler, but Jason, his father, probably likes to smallmouth bass fish better than he does walleyes. And so I'm using them as an example because I think this crosses over. You could be a young walleye fisherman wanting to succeed. You could be a young bass fisherman wanting to succeed. Okay. They're very similar. Just choose your species that you like and go that route. But to do that, you've got to be able to have the opportunity to brand yourself. You will not be able to brand yourself unless you hone your skills. Because you're going to be going up against Jay Shakirat, who doesn't take second very many times anymore on these small events. And he's starting to fish the Bass Opens, BASS Opens, and he's had some pretty good success. He's branding himself. Mark my words, Jay Secured is going to be one of the next superstars. He's a couple years away from it, probably. He's doing it. He doesn't have really much backing. He's the type of kid, though, that isn't going to let this go. He comes from a fishing family. He's going to be really, really good. He already is really, really good. So if you're an aspiring angler, you can't think that you're going to do this in just a couple weekends, fishing some local tournaments and took a 25th place. You need to look at it the way Corey Sprengel did. And if you truly want to do this as a living, build yourself into a high profile professional tournament angler, then you got to get your skills set to the point where you can beat a Corey Sprengel on occasion. Isaac Blackish being one of the new young guns in the walleye world. You need to be able to compete against Isaac. Hell, I can't beat Isaac very often, and granted, part of it is because of physical situations and my age. My mind probably could beat him, but I'm not going to all of a sudden run across Green Bay in 4-foot waves just to get to another spot. In some cases now, I can't take the beating. And so Isaac can, and Isaac does. And so does a lot of these young guys, because they fish that bay all the time. And so you need to develop your skills. All of the things that we talked about, the bottom line factor is Keith and I got to be very skillful. We analyzed our fishing just as much as we did the business end of things. You heard more about the business end of things here, but between the two of us, I don't even know how many world championships we had in those days. We're still pretty damn competitive, to this day, still pretty competitive. But more importantly than that is I hang with the young guns. Young guns are my friends, and all of them trust me. And all of them trust me and ask for help on the business end of things. So we talk fishing all the time. And the young kids can learn a lot from that. I mentored Billy Atkinson, and because he was good friends with McKeever Dahlberg, Keever spent a lot of time in my boat too. So I had two of the youngest guys in the walleye world that fished with me. And they're turning pro next year. They learned a lot of stuff. And I love being their mentor. They help me out because I've got this stupid muscle disease where I can't, get in and out of the boats and stuff as good as I could before. So I needed some help from younger people. And I shared some of my knowledge, and they're going to be good anglers, but they're possessed. If you're getting into the sport, especially with it being on fire, like we talked about, Greg, these young guys, there's a lot of them that are possessed. Fishing is their deal, and they're not going to take second place. They'll never be satisfied with it. Never, ever be satisfied with it. So those are your competitors. When a sport like fishing explodes, there's way more fishermen than there are basketball players or football players. So you can imagine the competition level is going to get pretty intense. Now the cool thing about fishing is you can enjoy it at any level. You don't have to enjoy it as a nationally sponsored hero to all other fishermen, right? You can enjoy it by being a local expert and fishing local tournaments and getting your enjoyment that way. So there's many ways in which you can fit into the fishing world from a competition standpoint, and fishing is just fun anyway. You don't even have to ever join a tournament to enjoy fishing in a big way. That's the beauty of the sport. And that's why it's on fire. Because anybody can do it. Anyone can do it at, or try to do it at the level. I basically, if you want to be a national star, though, you're going to have to step up your game. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is, at the same time, you need to meet people in the industry and not be afraid to shake a lot of hands. And as you brand yourself skill-wise, talk to the right people. And that's where a lot of young guys fail, is they just work on fishing and fishing and fishing. Some of them get really, really good, but they don't talk to the right people. they don't ever get a chance to meet Ron from Berkeley. That opens that door to allow you to work with a group of scientists and build baits together. Part of the beauty of the sport is when you figure stuff out, that's your knowledge. But if you want to go someplace with that knowledge, you have to talk to the right people. You have to be willing to have no for an answer many, many times before you get that final yes. And that's part of the learning process. You can build then your brand, you can build your sport, but your brand starts with your fishing skills. So learn how to fish. Find out where you are. There are a lot of anglers that will never be able to compete at the major level in bass or walleyes or redfish or wherever. They just don't have the time. They don't have the skill level. They don't have the ability to break down patterns and stuff in their mind. It's nothing against them. They can still enjoy fishing at whatever level comes into play. But there are also a lot of people that have that skill, that can do that. They have to hone it, and then they have to own it. Basically, they have to take that skill. I've always said tournament successes are basically like getting a college degree. What you do with that degree after you win some tournaments or some championships or maybe an Angler of the Year title or a world championship, what you do with that degree is up to you. You can go out and get a job, which means sponsorships, or you can just sit on it and the next year comes and goes and you've gained nothing from it. So put yourself in a position with your branding so that when you do win the big one, you get the opportunity to talk to the right people. And so that's what I would give a suggestion for young guys is build your brand. It's not going to happen overnight. Corey Springle, probably the latest phenom in both the well-roundedness. At first, he was a fantastic fisherman. He and Chase are best friends. He and Chase will be taking the next bite in Fish Wolves, along with Jason Shakir and Tommy Kimos and John Hoyer. They will be taking that business into the future. But they basically, we took Corey under our wing. Now, we taught him a lot of the business things. And now he's finally getting some good, meaningful sponsorships with some good companies. And he's building a career for himself. But Corey's 30-some years old, in his 30 or 31, 32, something like that. He was winning these events when he was 18 and 19 years old. In his early 20s, he already had 2 or 3 world championships. But he kept building his skills, honing his skills, building his brand, so that anyone in the walleye world that even studied it at all knew who Corey Springle was. When you get into that position, you're valuable for company. Now Corey's building baits with Berkeley and, building a hard bait with me and the team. It takes time. So a lot of people get impatient. They go into this 2 or 3 years. They just, they still like to fish. They still fish tournaments, but they just kind of give up on the business end of things. And I see some extremely skilled anglers that have very few sponsorships, and some of them are good enough that they'll get a big win every year or two, and they can survive. But that's a hard way to do it. It really is. In the walleye world, it is. In the bass world, I think that if you've got some backing to be on the road, and you can get enough sponsorships to be on the road, and you're a skilled angler, you could probably win, some pretty good money, because they have a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
Tons and tons. There's getting to be more opportunities in the walleye world, but it's not anywhere near what opportunities for winning money are in the bass world.
Well, one thing that sticks with me is I remember you saying, I don't want to butcher this, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it was the piece of advice. I think you may have said this to a young angler while we were filming one time, or I'm not exactly sure the context of why this was brought up, but I just remember you saying something along the lines of, don't share your secrets, sort of something along those lines. Just share. Yeah. Like don't.
I see it all the time now. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you were basically telling this young angler, tell people how you're catching these fish. Tell them. Get into specifics. Tell them how you're catching fish.
Yeah. The master of all fishermen is Bill Dance. Bill Dance made his career by teaching people how to fish, the integral details of how to catch fish. And he's been around forever. Bill's a pretty good friend, and I have nothing but admiration for him, because he developed a way in which, as an angler, you could make a really good living in the sport and help so many thousands, tens of thousands of anglers along the way. Bill was the master at it. What I see in a lot of the tournament anglers today, Greg, and the reason I gave that suggestion is because there's new things that are going on all the time. Guy goes and wins a tournament on Green Bay on a brand new bait. He doesn't tell anyone about the bait. Okay. But he doesn't have any sponsorships either. Okay. Where is he going to get? If he keeps that a secret, he might win another tournament, or maybe even one after that. But sooner or later, someone in his boat's going to see what he uses, and it's going to get out, and that bait then won't be as effective in the future. All right. That's just the way it works, like it or not like it. So if you have a secret, you're going to be able to keep it for a little while, but you're not going to go up that rung in the ladder that you're hoping for, other than maybe winning a few extra dollars in the tournament. Well, man, if that's where you are in the grand scope of the sport, that's fantastic. But if your wishes are like a Max Wilson's wishes, and like some of these other young anglers' wishes are, to build your brand into a career, you can't keep that secret. You need to talk about it and teach people why you're doing it. You need to take ownership of that technique so that people will identify you with that technique, not some other guy that starts doing it 3 years ago or in the future and starts talking about it then. If you developed a technique, if you're the one who discovered the lure, it was like me with the shiver minnow. Once I knew that the thing was a monster, then I did that on the water, and I knew in my heart this was going to change the scope of the business. I told the world about it, because I wanted the people to look at it and say, hey, this is something Kavaius and Parsons built. That's my brand. And then I became valuable to Moonshine, and I got a sponsorship with Shiver Minnows, and that's how you build your brand. And that's how you get in. People say all the time, oh, I sure wish I could build baits for this company. Well, you got to build that trust. You have to build your brand, and that you have to be looked at as an innovator, as a person that if a new company wants to get into the sport, they're coming to you because that's how you've set it up. And you can't do that by keeping secrets. You have to do that by teaching anglers how to fish. More than anything else, teach them how to fish. There's never been more ways to do that. If you're a successful angler, you can do blogs like this. You can do all kinds of things. You can do YouTube videos. You can build yourself into the point where, Fish Wolves, part of our business, is going to grow. I'm going to want to have 10 or 20 hardcore anglers to be able to do the teaching to the public through today's new digital media. I'll probably, and I don't know for sure because I have to get this okayed with Chase and the business end of what we're doing, but I'll probably take resumes from 20 anglers just like the Lindners never took my resume, but they let me use their media to grow. Okay. They vetted me. These guys are the real deal. They fished with us. They knew that we weren't spewing BS just to do it. We're actually doing what we said and teaching people how to fish. So if we came up with a nice idea for an article, they also, okay, what is it? Oh yeah, that sounds cutting edge. That we want to write about that. That's the type of crew that we want to put together with the Fish Wolves part of our business. And so again, education is key. That allows every one of those anglers. They might send me a resume and I might say no. Go back and hone your skills. You need more wins before you can talk, as an expert. Yep. With this group. This group of Fish Wolves is going to be the teachers in the future. And so that's the mentality. I love
the idea. That's fantastic.
I'm just debuting it right now because I'm taking ownership of it, Greg. Someone else wants to try to come out with it. I've already talked to you about it. Yeah, it's kind of cool because I know your podcast is probably not going to hit 5 million people, but you never know. Maybe.
Never know. Never know. It's I've
hopefully
heard,
this helps grow it
sure.
to the point where, it grows faster. But this is what we're going to be doing in the future with fish wolves. Our media will be, even bigger than what it is.
That's great.
And we're doing it with multiple anglers. It's not just Gary Parsons and Chase Parsons right now. We have a team of anglers that are second to none in the industry, and we're going to build that team to even be bigger. We have television components that go into the Discovery Channel. We will have every single type of digital media out there, and it's going to be a big deal.
That's exciting. When Gary Parsons says something's going to be a big deal, it's a big deal. I mean, well, it is. It's
going to give opportunities, Greg, to 20, 50.
That's exciting.
By Chase's my age, maybe thousands of anglers.
It's a great idea.
Able to build their identities on, in the sport of fishing, to be part of this, or to do something similar on their own right. And do it as an individual. It's just a little bit harder.
You're constantly, your work ethic is super impressive. You're in your office right now. I've been around your office. So you've always, I remember coming, to do a shoot and you be on your office, at your office working. There's a lot more to being a professional fisherman than just, a lot of time on the water. That's, as we've talked about, it's super important. Time on the water is super important, but you also have to work your tail off the water. And I've been very impressed to see that just with my own eyes, with your work ethic, Gary. I appreciate you just taking the time to share with me your thoughts on the business. I mean, this has been a masterclass. I think anybody listening to this that's a fan of fishing, specifically just professional fishing, but, tournament fishing, tournament walleye fishing, even a tournament bass fisherman, you've provided so much insight here that, like I said, it really has been a masterclass. And I thank you for sharing your thoughts and providing so much time with me. It's been a real pleasure. I really, really mean that.
Well, we've been friends for a long time, Greg. And, you've given me an opportunity here to tell a little bit of my story. Bits and pieces come out in other, media venues, maybe a little article here or there, but it just barely touches on really what happened in the background and some of the things for the future. I don't know everything about the sport, but I do study it. One thing that's been the most satisfying to me is that if there's someone who knows more on the business end of things now and on the fishing end of things, it's my son. And, people don't know that he did a lot of the sponsorship stuff with the AIM circuit, which is the largest team circuit, for grassroots fishermen for walleyes in the country. Chase has been on the board, but he does all the sponsor stuff. And, growing this part of the business, he's an integral part of it. I have a disease called inclusion body myositis. I was diagnosed with it about 18 months to 2 years ago. I knew that I had something wrong 5 or 6 years ago when I couldn't get up from tending a tip-up ice fishing. And I went to the doctor and I said, I had to crawl to my snowmobile and pull myself up. I couldn't get up. I couldn't do it. And so he started looking into this and, years of testing and finally, finding out I have an extremely rare muscle disease. I thought it was going to be ALS at first. Fortunately for me, it's not. It's a muscular disease and doesn't have anything to do with the mental part of things. Unfortunately for me, there's certain muscles in my legs and arms and hands that will waste away basically to where I'm probably headed for a wheelchair. I'm not saying that to make people feel bad. I'm saying it because this is a disease that's incurable right now. They're doing studies and stuff. I'm working with the top person in the country. My daughter is an emergency room physician. She searched this lady down. I'm going to Johns Hopkins. I just came back from an appointment there. The bottom line is I don't know how long I'll be able to fish. This disease progresses at different rates for different people. I'm hoping I can fish for quite a while yet. I've made some boat modifications. Once I'm in the boat, I feel at home. that sort of thing. But the reality is that I know for a long time I can help the young guys. I can help not only our crew, but other young guys. And I want to get back to the sport. This sport has been my whole life. And part of the ways that we can do that is to teach more people through TNB, through the Next Bite, and through Fish Wolves in particular, and expanding out that part of the media, working with multiple hosts, having experts in the field, doing blogs and things like that under the wing of more media. We've got a lot of eyeballs with this group. We're going to have even way more in the future. But also the young guys, me mentoring Billy Atkinson and then Kiefer Gilbert wasn't by accident. That's a give-take relationship. I'm going to need a new guy next year, a new young person that is willing to go and grab my life jacket and make my life easier in the boat. In return, I'll teach them how to be professional fishermen, at least portion of it. And but they have to rode with me. They have to make the sacrifices that Billy made. And he was fabulous during the course of the year. But I want to leave a legacy here. I could have been a dentist in Chilton, Wisconsin, had a huge practice, maybe even 2 or 3 of them. And when I died, the patients would have said, yeah, he's a really good guy. I liked him. And then a week later, nothing would have been part of the legacy, right? I've always wanted to build a legacy in this sport, and I owe this sport everything. So as the business grows and Chase and Corey and those guys take it forward into the future, I can stay in the background and help with a lot of the office stuff. And, I'll be doing this until I probably can't anymore. So a podcast like this, let's look at it. It's kind of a small podcast, but it's a place to start. And nobody's going to get this type of information because no one takes the time that you spent. Jason Mitchell's doing some podcasts that get pretty long-winded. And for the most part, I listen to them if it's someone that I really like, but sometimes I don't get through them all. And I know that there will be a lot of people that don't get through this one because there's a lot of business talk. But there's going to be a handful that do. And there's going to be a handful that take something from this, Greg. And you change someone's life here with this podcast. I changed someone's life with working with you on it. And that's how you win the war. It's a few people at a time. And every once in a while, it's a lot of people all at one time. But that's how you make a career in this industry, is by doing just these types of things.
Well, I want to thank you for, again, talking with me, and it's been a real pleasure as a fan of fishing. I don't take this for granted. I also just, I'm very proud to be a part of your legacy. And that's I really am, reading about you guys growing up, watching you before I got into the industry, I thought very highly of you guys, and I don't take any of that for granted. To have shared the times that we've shared, filming, and those are all very fond memories for me. So, so thank you for what you've done in the industry. Thanks for allowing me to come along for the ride to a certain extent, and to be a part of your life, and to do this podcast today. I know you're doing me a favor here, but I also, know that people will hear this, and the insight that you've provided is really invaluable. So just thanks again for doing this, Gary.
I appreciate the opportunity. I do want to make a side note, because I know a lot of people wonder about it. And that's with Keith. I couldn't have done any of this, Craig, without Keith Gavais. He's my lifetime friend. He's married to my sister, Lynn. He's a hell of a fisherman. And he's been an unbelievably good business partner for all these years. I think that through the years, the business end of things can kind of grind on you, right? I don't care what level you're at. You get a fair amount of times where you have to deal with the company that you might have been with for 20 years. And then a bunch of new people move in in marketing position, and you got to reprove yourself. And I think that gets to be, if they're, I look at the young kids where they say, oh, fishing's a grind, 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 grind. If we hear grind one more time, I'd like to just kick them right in the ass, right? But the reality is the grind is in the business end of fishing. Fishing itself is awesome. It always has been. So, you just because you're not catching a fish every 3 casts doesn't mean that it's a freaking grind. It's not. It's still fun, or you wouldn't be doing it. The business end, though, can be a grind. The constant getting turned down, the constant having to prove yourself. When maybe in our case, we've made companies millions of dollars, and all of a sudden we're on the docket and we might get cut for the next year. And the business goes away when that happens, right? Or you start over. I think that took its toll. And Keith he likes to fish. He started this first and foremost to fish. That man will fish more than anyone that I know. He will pick up a rod, and the only one I've ever met that's even close is this Billy Atkinson, this young kid. That's all he does is fish. But Keith is like that. He's always been like that. And he told me when he wanted to retire away from business that he was still going to fish. He's going to fish all over. He's going to fish places, times when he wants, places that he wants. He's going to go saltwater fishing. He's going to go fishing, explore new lakes. He's going to do those types of things. Maybe for the first time in 30, 40 years, he's able to do that. And God bless his soul. I'm happy for him. I get into the business thing. It's a challenge to me. I'm still really competitive. So even though the business end is a grind, I still like to try to make a difference. And, and I have a little different situation. I have a young man who's been in this business for 18 years. He's a stud angler, and he's even more of a stud in the business end of things. I help him take my business to be his business, totally his business and his friend's business. And, so they can do another 18 or 30 years of TV or whatever media that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Might be virtual reality in a bubble. Who knows what the hell is going to happen in the future. But I wanted to give Keith his kudos because he was and is to this day. He still fishes tournaments. So he's fishing AIM tournaments. He's fishing tournaments at times a year now that he wants to.
And anybody that's a fan of tournament fishing, specifically tournament walleye fishing, but has really had their finger on just the pulse of fishing, just in freshwater fishing. The Cavaius Parsons team is legendary. Parsons, Cavaius, Parsons, whatever last name you want to put first. That is a legendary fishing team. I mean, so no matter what you guys have developed, what you guys have built, I mean, talk about a template for others to use, to be successful. And just, I don't know. I think I'm happy to hear, Keith and I have spent a ton of time together. We've had great talks. I'm happy to hear he's doing well. But
I think he's happy. I think he's really happy, Greg.
That's fantastic. I mean, and you guys, what you're doing with the Next Bite and Fish Wolves, super excited to hear about that and see that come down the pike. No, you guys are, I mean, what a legacy that you've left. That can never be taken away from you guys.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it, man.
Well, I've enjoyed it very much, Gary. I'll let you see Mary in the background, and you got Vishlas that need attention. So I've really appreciated it. And
hi, Greg.
Yeah. Hi, Mary. Good to hear you. I know you're back there somewhere. I've seen you walk in the background a few times.
I'm hiding.
No, it's like I've said, you guys, it's really been good to be a part of the Next Bite family. And like I said, those memories I'll cherish forever. So thanks again, Gary. It's been a blast talking with you.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.